Hey everybody, welcome to another Architect's Eye. We are looking at a small town called Ratchet near the coastline of the Barrens. So let's get right into it. Ratchet is a new type of context that we have not seen in our reviews so far. It is located at a coastline, which means that it is subject to some unique conditions, such as the ocean breeze and irregular rains that do take place in a typical coastline context. This is quite different than the other two sites we have reviewed, one including the Crossroads. It was a hot arid climate, meaning no rain. It was quite dry, so the architecture there was significantly different. The other one being the Centaur architecture, which was close to a green space, sort of an oasis, but that did receive some amount of rain, but not as much as you would see in this location, and the rain pattern would be a lot different. So Ratchet is a little different. So how so? The climate here is hot, dry, but with elevated ambient humidity due to its closeness to salt water. Rain is irregular, but when it arrives, it's fast, light, very typical to many coastal desert margins. There are standard wood frame buildings with timber cladding, heavy wood frame structure wrapped in adobe or plaster, likely for insulation, and perhaps thermal mass. And a collection of industrial metal sheds, mostly where goblins conduct mechanical experiments. This isn't uniform architecture language. It's layered, it's additive, possibly unplanned. Some of it works, most of it doesn't. Let's start with the roof form. Nearly every building here, regardless of size or material, uses a steep pitch. Too steep for a region that receives minimal rain. The roof geometry doesn't match the climate. There's no snow load to accumulate. The rainfall runoff doesn't justify this angle. More appropriate would be a moderate pitched roof with extended overhangs, something to shed the little rain they do receive while shielding facades from the direct sun. While the buildings do have overhangs, I find the design and the location of these very strange. As you can see from the basic solar study, placing overhang over the second floor does protect the terrace over the main floor, which does reduce the radiant heat that gets transferred to the main floor. However, the main facade of the building is left unprotected. This is a big problem in the case of the bank building itself, which is facing the south, receiving maximum amount of light throughout the day. While it does have adobe-like material that provides extra protection against the heat transfer, it is offset by the large windows and entries. Now here's my main issue with the high-pitched roofs in Ratchet. They could not have been designed worse. You see, high-pitched roofs provide the heat to rise, cooling down the occupants below. But this only works if the roofs were just vented, allowing the heat to be removed from the building, keeping the occupants below cool. This has to be the biggest missed opportunity in this context. As we said earlier, Ratchet has some unique conditions being a coastal town. It receives a plenty of ocean breeze. However, the buildings do not harness this. Simply providing windows facing the ocean is not sufficient if the air has no place to exit the building. This causes the principle of aerodynamics to break down. You need a positive entry and a negative pressured exit for the cool air to enter the building, displacing the hot air. None of the buildings in Ratchet has this, not even a window in the rear to act as a negatively pressured exit point. Buildings are sealed and fully enclosed with no high vents or cross vent paths. The adobe and the stone wrapped structures would have easily integrated passive airflow using simple masonry voids under the eaves. Even a 1 brick gap every 4 feet would have allowed for heat to rise and exit. Instead, interior air remains stagnant. Hot air collects beneath the steep roofline and with no release. These buildings are fighting the heat, not venting it. Now, I'm not saying that all buildings are bad here. Buildings like the bank have a really good pitch that works for this climate. But the buildings like the inn and few other small huts, not so much. Also, some site decisions are promising. A few buildings are built directly against the southern hill, using the terrain as a thermal buffer. That's smart. Earth mass walls reduce the exposure and create passive cooling on at least one side. However, this advantage is undermined when those same buildings then orient their entries or their windows into the full sun, or use blackened material that retain the heat. To give some benefit to the goblins and their engineering background, attached to inn is a mechanical tower. It seems like it's a raised tank, a pressure fed pipe sloping into the building. It appears to be a pump system, possibly a solution to the saltwater context, collecting, filtering, and delivering potable water. That's clever. It's the only piece of infrastructure here that responds directly to the site's water limitations. Elsewhere, metal buildings are dense, dark, totally enclosed, poor in hot, humid zones. They're likely functioning more as equipment enclosure than habitable spaces. Still, their thermal retainage and lack of ventilation make them incompatible with a long-term use, even for work. The final issue is the coherence. Ratchet doesn't operate like a design town. It behaves more like built-up outpost responding to the trade. Buildings aren't oriented for comfort nor performance. They're positioned for access and cargo flow. That tells me function here is logistic, not environmental. Ratchet could have been a model for coastal adaptation, leveraging shade, wind, and thermal mass. Instead, it uses different architecture from different zones to create sort of an icon. The result is a settlement here that's more temporary than tactical, a missed opportunity for design logic in a high potential site.